I immigrated to this country at the age of 9 from Afghanistan. Before that, I remember being a very sassy, bossy, confident girl at the age of 8. Even I remember that. But around that time, it was the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, and my world just turned upside down. We ended up immigrating, fleeing for our lives in the middle of the night with the clothes on our backs. And once we came to this country, it was a huge culture shock for me. I became debilitatingly shy. So shy, in fact, that I couldn't speak in class. Because when we came, I was still in fourth grade, but when we came, based on like the changes and the age ranges and all that, they bumped me to fifth grade. And so imagine fifth grade, I didn't speak English probably the rest of that year because we started school in January. So finished fifth grade with very little English, go into sixth grade, still learning English. We're being bullied for our accents and looking weird and being different looking, not being familiar with the culture. And then by seventh grade, I'm still very new to this country. And my teacher sends me outside to go work on this lab. And I remember I started crying because I was so overwhelmed. Everything was so new still, and I was so scared. And that was so mortifying for me. I was just so humiliated. And then I just was so shy. I couldn't speak in class. When they would ask me a question, I would turn bright red. I would sweat. And I had this terrible habit of sweating on my nose. I had these beads just building up on the tip of my nose when I would get nervous. So everybody in the world could tell how nervous I was. So fast forward, high school, the same thing. I'm just very, very nervous, very, very shy, afraid to make friends, just afraid to exist, basically. And so by the time I was 19, I was just like, I'm so sick of this. This isn't me. This isn't the person I remember being in school. I used to have friends. I used to command respect, and even though I was 8 years old. And I was like, I know this person that I'm presenting right now is not me. So I didn't know anything about psychology. Coming to a different country, it was a whole new concept. And at that time in the 80s, it was a new concept even in this country. It wasn't as acceptable as it is now. And so I remember taking my first psychology class in a community college, and I just fell in love with it because finally I was getting the language that I needed to understand what was going on with me. And then when I turned 19, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be 20 next year. I don't want to continue to live in fear and be such a small person. So I started pushing myself and continued to take psychology, made that my major, pushed myself to say, okay, I'm really scared of speaking in front of people. So what's the best way that I can overcome this? And so I took a drama class, and my drama teacher had some kind words to say. It's like, you're not a great actress. You have good stage presence, but you're not a good actress. So basically, don't quit your day job. And so, but at the same time, I was so proud of myself for putting myself out there and actually acting on stage just so I can overcome this fear. I went rappelling off the side of the mountain. I was afraid of snakes. So I was like, okay, there's a boa constrictor. Let's put that around my neck so I can overcome my fear. Whatever the fear was that I felt like, okay, I need to overcome this so I can feel more confident. I just kept pushing myself and pushing myself. I read self-help books like they were going out of style. I mean, I was picking up all kinds of books just to kind of understand myself and make meaning of what was going on with me. Obviously, there was trauma involved from my history, and that was affecting me. There was just trying to integrate the two cultures, just being made fun of for being so proper as a college student. Like, oh my gosh, you're so proper with the way you speak. And because when you're learning a second language, you're going to enunciate everything. You're not using a lot of slang. And so being made fun of for even that. But over time, the more I kept growing, the more I kept pushing myself, the more I realized this is something I want to do. And because of my background and because of my understanding of dealing with anxieties, social anxiety, with OCD, being debilitatingly shy, dealing with trauma, all of that has really helped me understand my patients and my students and understand them at a level that goes beyond the textbook definition of these things. So much so that although I knew that I had a history of anxiety with my family and OCD, where my grandfather was famous for his OCD, I didn't really connect any of that to myself based on the definition of these things in the DSM-4 and the DSM-5, or just the DSM in general, which is the diagnosing manual for mental health professionals and psychiatrists and medical professionals. None of that fit me necessarily until I was able to see it in a way that went beyond the definition. Because a lot of my family members, nobody has been diagnosed with anxiety in my family. But you can see, once you know what anxiety can look like and how it can affect your life, you can see how it affects them, and you can see the patterns, and then you can identify that. And so when I looked at it that way, I was in my 30s, I'd just become a mom, and I became so terrified. As long as my daughter was in my belly and I had control, I was fine. But as soon as she was born, I was terrified of every bad thing happening to her, the catastrophization that happened in my mind, the personalization of everything, just being afraid of every little thing that could happen, the irrational thoughts and beliefs, the fears that started kicking in. That's when I was like, okay, something major is going on here. I mean, I know I was always afraid and I was shy, but now this is becoming something major. So when I started working on that and I started acknowledging and recognizing, okay, this is OCD, this is anxiety, this is way more than just me being a little bit nervous or a little shy. And I started really working on that. I came up with a natural way, because right before this, in my 20s, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. Is when your hormones are out of balance and you end up developing cysts, like the endometrium of the lining of your uterus gets lodged outside of your organs. So I had a 10-centimeter cyst on my ovary, but I was a poor graduate student at that time. I didn't have insurance, and I wasn't going to graduate and get a job until the following year. So I had 1 year of making sure that my cyst did not burst and damage my reproductive organs, because if they did, there's a high risk of infertility with people that have endometriosis, because the cyst bursts, it creates scar tissue, organs end up binding together. It's just a terrible thing. But at that time, when I was 26, people didn't really know or understand that much about endometriosis. And so even when I was telling my doctors, I don't want surgery, I want to try something different, they would just laugh at me or say, she doesn't know what she's talking about. This kid thinks she has all the answers. So I kind of avoided them for a while. In a year, I just gave myself a year to figure it out. And I learned about herbs. I learned about alternative medicine. Acupuncture became my best friend. Massage became my best friend. I just started learning about essential oils and really, really learning an alternative lifestyle, and changed my diet, changed all of that. Really helped me manage my anxiety until, of course, I became a mom, and then everything kind of went out of whack again. But it helped me in that year. By the time I was able to go into get surgery and had insurance at that time, my body was so healthy that when they did that surgery, it was a clean removal of the cyst, no damage to my ovaries, no damage to my organs. And so I became a huge believer in a holistic alternative lifestyle like that. And I incorporated that into my treatment of my patients with anxiety and depression or whatever they were going through. And so the more I learned about alternative supplements and oils and alternative healing methods, the less dependent I became on resorting to recommending medication for my patients. The more they started benefiting from this alternative treatment modality as well. And so for that reason, I've been in practice for over 15 years. And in the past 10 years, at least, I have not referred anybody out for medication for managing their anxiety or depression. And the treatments that I've incorporated with my patients and also now my online students, I never recommend medication. Of course, there's a place for medication, but I'm of the mindset of doing everything as natural as possible with the minimum harm to your body. And then if none of that's working, of course, go towards the medication route, but do everything you can first before you resort to that.